The great stone hall of the alien palace was filled with laughter. Torches burned along the walls, their flames dancing on the tall pillars carved with faces of old alien kings. At the far end, on a golden throne, sat the alien king himself. His crown glimmered under the light, and his cold eyes looked down with sharp pride. Beside him stood his daughter, wrapped in royal silk. She was beautiful, her long silver hair shining like moonlight. But the court did not see her beauty. They saw only her curse. They whispered the word like poison, Barren. For years, she had been called useless, a shame to the royal line, a daughter who could never give an heir. And then there was the human. He stood tall in the center of the hall, his plain clothes strange among the shining robes and armor of the alien nobles. His face was calm, his shoulders firm, as if he did not hear their laughter. But he did. Every cruel word, every mocking laugh. The alien king leaned forward on his throne. His lips curled into a cruel smile. "So, you are the human who dares to marry my daughter?" His voice echoed like thunder. "Do you not know her fate? Do you not fear your shame? She cannot give you a child. She cannot give you a future. You are a fool." The hall roared with laughter. Nobles slapped their hands on the stone tables. Some even threw cups of wine to the floor, their laughter bouncing off the walls. Guards smirked, looking at the human with pity, as if he were already defeated. The princess lowered her head. Her fingers trembled as she held her silk veil, hiding her face. She had heard these words all her life. They cut her deeper than any blade. But beside her stood the man who had chosen her. A man who did not flinch. A man who looked at her not with pity, but with something else. Respect. The human raised his head slowly. His eyes locked with the alien king's. He did not shout. He did not defend himself with words. He only spoke with calm strength. "I did not marry your daughter for your throne. I did not marry her for your court. I married her because she is mine and I am hers." The words silenced the hall for a moment. Whispers rippled like snakes through the crowd. Some sneered, others frowned. But a few stared at the human with surprise. Who was this man who spoke with such boldness in front of the king? The king laughed again, louder this time. "Yours? Ha! A barren woman is worth nothing. She is not fit to be a queen. She cannot carry your seed. She cannot carry life. What use is she to you?" The princess flinched as if stabbed. Her body shook with shame, and tears stung her eyes. But then she felt something warm, her husband's hand, gently taking hers. His touch steadied her. She dared to look at him, and what she saw in his eyes made her chest tighten. There was no fear. There was no shame. Only quiet fire. The human looked back at the king. "What is useless to you is priceless to me. You see failure. I see hope. You see emptiness. I see a future." The words carried through the hall like a spark in dry grass. Some nobles gasped. Others laughed harder, pointing at him as if he were mad. But deep in the silence between the laughter, doubt stirred. The king's smile faltered for a second. The princess felt her heart race. She had never been defended like this. Never. For the first time in her life, she was not standing alone against the mockery of the court. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe in the impossible. The king slammed his staff against the ground. "Enough! You dare speak of hope in my hall? You, a fragile human, who knows nothing of our blood, our curse. You will regret your foolishness. Mark my words, human, this union will end in shame. And when it does, I will laugh louder than ever before." The hall erupted in cruel laughter again, echoing like a storm. Yet in the center of the storm, the human stood still, holding his wife's hand. His silence was not weakness, it was strength. His calm was not defeat, it was challenge. The alien king leaned back, watching him with narrowed eyes. For the first time, something unsettled him. Why was this man not afraid? Why did he not bend? Why did his daughter look at him with eyes that burned brighter than before? The torches flickered, shadows crawling across the walls. The court mocked, the king sneered, but the human's steady gaze remained like stone. He whispered softly, only loud enough for his wife to hear, "They laugh now. But one day, they will choke on their laughter." Her lips parted, her tears drying. A small spark of belief lit inside her chest. And as the hall filled with the sound of cruel joy, somewhere in the silence between, destiny quietly began to turn. The king thought he had won. But he had no idea what was coming. The grand hall had fallen silent after the king's cruel laughter, but the whispers did not end there. They traveled through the palace like smoke, curling into every corner. Servants whispered in the kitchens. Guards whispered at the gates. Nobles whispered behind their jeweled fans. The human is a fool. The princess will never carry life. This marriage is only shame. But not every whisper was the same. A few dared to ask different questions. Why did the human not tremble? Why did he not bow his head like others? Why did the princess suddenly look alive? The alien king ignored these murmurs. To him, they were meaningless. He sat on his throne, convinced of his power. Yet in the quiet of her chamber, the princess felt something different. She sat by the window, staring at the stars, her hand resting gently on her chest. For the first time in years, she felt warmth. Not the false warmth of pity, but something real. Something her human husband had lit inside her. When he entered the room, she turned quickly, embarrassed by her tears. "They will never stop mocking us," she whispered. "They will never believe in me." The human walked to her slowly, his footsteps steady, his eyes calm. He sat beside her, lifting her trembling hand into his. "They do not need to believe," he said softly. "I believe. And that is enough." Her lips parted, her eyes shining with unshed tears. She had lived her life being called worthless, cursed, broken. Yet here was someone who saw none of that. His gaze carried no judgment, no doubt. It was as if he had torn away the chains that had bound her heart for so long. But outside the chamber walls, danger stirred. The alien king had ordered his spies to watch the human closely. Guards trailed his every step. Every word he spoke was reported back. The king wanted proof of failure. Proof that this human's boldness was only foolishness. One night, as the moon painted silver light across the palace, a spy crouched near the princess's chamber window. Through a small crack, he saw the couple together. He heard their voices. The human spoke of life, of strength, of love strong enough to break curses. He told her of the human world, of children who had survived against impossible odds, of hope that grew even in the harshest soil. His words carried fire, but also something strange to alien ears. Faith. The princess listened, her heart racing. "What if it is true?" she whispered. "What if I am not barren? What if all my life they were wrong?" The human smiled, brushing her silver hair from her face. "Then one day you will show them. And when you do, they will not laugh again." The spy's eyes widened. He rushed away into the night, his footsteps echoing down the stone hallways. By dawn, the king knew everything. The alien king laughed when he heard the tale. Foolish dreams. The human fills her head with lies. Hope will only crush her harder when it dies. Yet deep inside, something sharp stabbed at his pride. The human's calm face haunted him. His daughter's glowing eyes disturbed him. At the morning feast, the whispers grew louder. Some nobles sneered, but others watched the human with curious eyes. He walked with quiet strength, his hand never leaving the princess's. For the first time, the court saw her lift her chin, not in shame, but in defiance. The alien king narrowed his eyes. He could not allow this. Hope was dangerous. If hope grew, it could shatter his control. That night, under the shadow of the throne, he called his most trusted guard. His voice was a whisper of iron. Watch them closely. Break this hope before it grows. Do not let them believe in miracles. But the king did not know sometimes whispers cannot be broken. Sometimes whispers grow into storms. And already, in the heart of his daughter, something had begun to stir. The palace slept in silence, but not every chamber was at rest. Behind locked doors and thick curtains, the human lit a small lamp. Its golden glow filled the room, pushing away the shadows. The princess sat across from him, her silver hair falling loose over her shoulders. She looked nervous, her hands gripping the folds of her robe. "What is this ritual you speak of?" she whispered. Her voice carried both fear and curiosity. The human placed a small wooden box on the table. Inside were strange herbs, powders, and a vial of glowing liquid he had brought from his world. The princess had never seen such things. They looked alive, almost breathing in the dim light. "It is not magic," he said calmly. "It is knowledge. In my world, we heal the body. We mend what is broken. Tonight, I will not promise miracles, but I promise hope." Her eyes softened. No one had ever offered her hope. No one, except him. Slowly, he mixed the herbs with the glowing liquid, whispering words from his language. The scent rose into the air, sharp yet strangely soothing. He placed the mixture into her hands. "Drink," he said softly. Her fingers trembled. "What if it does nothing? What if the king is right?" The human leaned closer, his voice steady. "Then nothing changes. But if I am right, everything changes." She closed her eyes and with a deep breath, drank. The liquid burned as it slid down her throat, yet it left behind warmth deep, glowing warmth that spread through her chest and belly. Her eyes widened, glowing faintly in the dim light. For the first time she felt something alive inside her. She gasped, clutching his arm. "What is this feeling?" "Life," he whispered. But outside their door, danger lurked. A spy crouched in the shadows, his ear pressed to the stone wall. He had followed them for days, ordered by the king to gather proof of their foolishness. What he heard tonight, however, made his heart race. He rushed down the hallway, eager to report. But the human, sharp as ever, had sensed him. He blew out the lamp, pulling the princess into the shadows. When the door creaked open, the chamber looked empty, only silence and darkness. The spy frowned, uneasy. He was certain he had heard voices. But now there was nothing. He slipped away, not realizing the human's hand was still covering the princess's lips, keeping her breath quiet. When the spy's footsteps faded, the human released her gently. She pressed her forehead against his chest, her body still warm from the strange mixture. "They will never allow this," she whispered. "If my father finds out." The human lifted her chin. His eyes burned like fire. "Then we will fight. Not with swords, not with war, but with truth. When they see what you carry, no one will deny you again." Her heart pounded. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe in the impossible. And deep inside, in a place long thought empty, a spark had begun to grow. But in the king's chamber, the spy knelt on the cold floor, recounting everything he had heard. The king laughed, though the sound was sharp and uneasy. Rituals? Herbs? Lies from a human tongue. Let him try his tricks. My daughter is cursed, and no man, not even a fool from earth, can change that. Yet even as he spoke, a shadow crossed his mind. For the first time, the alien king felt a small tremor of doubt, and doubt, once born, spreads like fire. The days that followed were not peaceful. The palace seemed alive with eyes. Servants watched silently as the human walked the marble halls. Guards whispered to each other whenever the princess passed by. Even the wind that rattled the curtains felt heavy, as though it carried secrets. The alien king had grown restless. Reports from his spies spoke of strange rituals, of hope growing where there should be none. Hope was dangerous. If the people believed his barren daughter could carry an heir, they might question his power. He could not allow it. In the royal court, the king's voice thundered, "From this day forward, the human is not to be left alone with my daughter. Guards will keep them apart. Let their foolish whispers end before they spread." The princess's face turned pale. Her father's decree was a prison. Her nights would be watched, her movements chained. She clenched her hands under her silk sleeves, but she said nothing. To speak would only bring her father's rage. That night, however, she defied him. Under the cover of darkness, the princess slipped from her chamber. She pulled her veil low, her steps soft against the cold stone floor. She moved through hidden corridors, passages she had memorized as a child. And there, waiting in the shadows, was the human. When she reached him, her breath was trembling. "If they catch me," he silenced her with a finger to her lips. "Then let them catch us. But tonight, you are mine, and I am yours. Nothing else matters." Her heart raced. For the first time in her life, she chose defiance. They met in secret, whispering words of hope and holding on to each other like the world outside did not exist. For a brief moment, there was no curse, no court. There was only them, but danger was never far. From the darkness, two shadowy figures moved, assassins cloaked in black, blades glinting under the moonlight. The king's patience had run thin. If hope could not be crushed by words, it would be crushed by steel. The human sensed movement. He pulled the princess back just as a dagger sliced through the air, grazing the wall where her head had been. The assassins lunged, swift and silent. The human grabbed a torch from the wall, swinging it wide. Fire roared, lighting the corridor. The assassins hissed, their blades flashing. The princess clutched her chest, watching in horror as her husband faced trained killers with nothing but fire and courage. He fought like a man who had everything to lose. Each strike of the assassins was met with desperate strength. The torch became his sword, the flame his shield. Sparks flew, steel clashed, and the corridor rang with echoes of battle. Finally, one assassin slipped back into the shadows, retreating with a growl. The other, wounded by the burning torch, collapsed before him. The human stood over the fallen figure, his breath heavy, sweat dripping down his brow. The princess rushed to him, her eyes wide with fear and awe. "They will never stop," she whispered. "My father will not rest until you are gone." The human dropped the torch, letting the fire die. He pulled her into his arms, his voice low but steady. "Then let him come. Let the whole world come. We will not break." But even as he spoke, the princess gasped, clutching her stomach. A strange warmth pulsed within her, deeper and stronger than before. She staggered, her body trembling. He caught her, his arms tightening around her. "What is it? What's happening?" Her lips trembled. I don't know. But it feels alive." His heart pounded. Could it be? Was the ritual working? And as the moonlight spilled across the floor, he knew something had begun that no king, no assassin, no shadow could stop. The palace woke to chaos. Servants rushed through the corridors, carrying bowls of water, bundles of herbs, and clean sheets. The princess had collapsed during the night, and now she lay on her bed, her skin glowing faintly, as if touched by some hidden fire. The alien king stormed into her chamber, his cloak sweeping behind him. "What is this madness?" he thundered. His eyes darted from his daughter to the human, standing protectively at her side. "What trick have you done to her?" The human did not move. His hand rested on the princess's shoulder. "No trick. She is changing. Something inside her is awakening." The king scoffed, but his voice wavered. He turned to the doctors, alien healers draped in heavy robes, their eyes wide with confusion. They examined her, their hands glowing faintly with the touch of alien science. They whispered among themselves, their voices nervous. At last, the oldest doctor spoke. Her body shows signs we do not understand. Energy flows where it once was empty. Something is growing. The king slammed his staff against the floor. Lies, all of you. She is barren. She has always been barren. Yet even as he roared, his eyes betrayed something else. Fear. Outside the chamber, whispers spread like wildfire. Servants carried tailies to the kitchens. Guards repeated them at the gates. The princess is glowing. Her body is changing. Could it be? She carries life. The court began to stir with unease. Nobles who had once laughed now frowned in doubt. Some still mocked, but others spoke in hushed voices of miracles, of curses breaking, of hope where none should be. Meanwhile, in the quiet of her chamber, the princess stirred. She opened her eyes, dazed but smiling faintly. Her hand moved slowly to her stomach. It feels warm, she whispered. As if something inside me is alive. The human knelt beside her, his eyes burning with quiet victory. They called you barren. They mocked you. But look at you now. You are proof that hope cannot be killed. Tears slipped from her eyes, but they were not tears of pain, they were tears of joy. For the first time in her life, she felt whole. She felt more than a daughter cursed by fate. She felt like a mother, but not everyone rejoiced. The alien king dismissed the doctors with rage, locking the chamber doors behind him. He stood in the shadows, staring at his daughter as she slept, her glow lighting the room. His fists clenched. This was dangerous. If word spread, his power could crumble. The people would see the human as a savior. His daughter would rise above her curse, and he, the mighty king, would look like a fool. No, he would not allow it. That night he summoned his council in secret. His voice was sharp, laced with venom. This hope must die before it takes root. If my daughter carries life, then that life must be ended, quietly, before the people know. The council shifted uneasily. Some nodded in obedience, but others hesitated. For the first time, doubt crept into the palace walls. Back in her chamber, the princess clung to her husband's hand, whispering through heavy breaths. They will come for us. I know my father. He will not let this child live. The human pressed his forehead to hers, his voice firm. Then we protect it. With everything we have. The room fell silent, but her glowing body spoke louder than words. Hope had begun to grow. And no power, no king, no curse could stop it now. The palace that once echoed with laughter, now trembled with whispers of fear. Servants carried food with lowered eyes. Guards stood stiff at their posts, but their glances betrayed unease. Everyone had heard the rumors. The barren princess might be carrying life. The alien king, however, was boiling with rage. He sat in his private chamber, his fists clenched on the arm of his throne. His most loyal spies stood before him. This lie must end, he hissed. The human has poisoned her mind. If she gives birth, the people will see me as weak. They will call him savior. I will not allow it. One spy dared to speak. But my king, what if it is true? What if she carries an heir? The king's eyes burned with fury. Then the heir dies with her. The words fell heavy in the chamber. Even the torches seemed to flicker in fear. That night, betrayal walked silently through the palace halls. A maid entered the princess's chamber with a tray of soup. Her eyes looked down, her hands trembling. But inside the bowl, mixed with the broth, was poison strong enough to still a beating heart. She placed it gently by the bed, bowing low. The human's eyes narrowed. He studied her face, the way she avoided his gaze. Something felt wrong. He stepped forward, taking the tray before the princess could touch it. He dipped his finger into the soup, bringing it to his lips. The maid gasped. The taste was bitter. His jaw tightened. In one swift motion, he threw the tray to the floor, the soup splattering across the stone. He grabbed the maid's wrist, his voice sharp. "Who sent you?" The princess covered her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. The maid shook with fear, tears spilling down her cheeks. I was ordered. If I refused, they would kill me." "Who?" The human pressed, but before she could answer, a dagger flew through the window. It struck her in the chest, silencing her forever. She collapsed to the floor, her blood staining the shattered soup. The princess screamed, clinging to her husband's arm. He pulled her back, his eyes scanning the shadows outside. Someone was watching. Someone wanted to silence every witness. The next morning, the palace buzzed with new rumors. Some whispered that the king himself had sent the maid. Others claimed powerful nobles wanted the princess gone. The court was no longer united. Divisions cracked the once strong walls. Some nobles, secretly, began to question the king. What if the child is real? What if hope has returned to the royal bloodline? If so, the king cannot destroy it. But loyalists whispered back with venom. The human is dangerous. The king must protect the throne. The child must never live. Inside her chamber, the princess trembled. Her hands rested protectively on her stomach. "They will kill us," she whispered, "even if it means betraying their own blood." The human sat beside her, his hand covering hers. His eyes, once calm, now burned like fire. "Let them try. They will find that I am not as weak as they believe." But even as he spoke, he knew the truth. Betrayal was everywhere. The palace was no longer safe. Every shadow held an enemy. Every smile could hide a blade. And as the days passed, the princess's body grew heavier, her glow stronger. The proof could no longer be hidden. She carried life. The king's throne trembled with fear. The human's resolve hardened like iron, and the palace itself became a battlefield, waiting for the moment when hope and betrayal would finally clash. The night was heavy with thunder. Dark clouds wrapped the palace like a curse. Rain struck against the high windows, each drop echoing like a drum of war. Inside the princess's chamber, cries filled the air, not of fear, but of labor. The princess lay on the bed, her body glowing brighter than ever. Sweat poured down her face as she gripped the sheets, her breath coming in sharp gasps. The human knelt beside her, his hand locked in hers. His eyes never left her face, even as her cries shook him to the core. "You are stronger than them all," he whispered. Hold on for us." Outside the chamber, the alien king paced the halls like a caged beast. His robes dragged across the cold stone floor, his crown tilted as if the storm itself weighed on him. Courtiers and nobles gathered in silence, their faces pale with tension. The king sneered. "It will end in death. She will fail, as she always has. And when she fails, I will laugh again." But his voice betrayed unease. He was waiting for silence, waiting for tragedy. Yet deep inside, a fear clawed at him. What if he was wrong? Hours passed. The storm raged on. Guards stood frozen outside the door. Servants huddled in corners, whispering prayers. Then, suddenly, the cry came, not the scream of pain, not the sound of loss, but the sharp, pure cry of new life. A child. The chamber door burst open, and the midwife stepped out, her hands trembling, her face pale with shock. Her voice cracked as she spoke. "My king." "It is an heir." Gasps filled the hall. Courtiers clutched their chests. Some wept openly. The guards stood straighter, their eyes wide with disbelief. The impossible had happened. The king froze, his eyes wide, his lips trembling. "No, it cannot be." His voice broke into a whisper. The chamber doors opened wider. The human emerged, his arms cradling a small bundle wrapped in cloth. His face was tired, his body bruised with struggle, but his eyes burned with quiet triumph. He lifted the child high for all to see. The baby's skin glowed faintly, its tiny hands curling into fists. The mark of both human and alien blood. Proof undeniable. The court fell into stunned silence. The king's mockery had turned to ash. His barren daughter had given him what he could not deny an heir. The princess appeared at the doorway, weak but radiant. Her silver hair clung to her damp skin, her eyes filled with tears of joy. She whispered, her voice shaking but strong, "Father, you laughed at me all my life. Tell me, will you laugh now?" The king staggered back, his face pale, his hands gripping his throne for balance. Rage, fear, and humiliation twisted inside him. His court no longer looked at him with loyalty, they looked at the child. They looked at the human. They looked at hope. For the first time, the king felt powerless, but the night was not over. Far in the shadows of the hall, unseen eyes watched. A cloaked figure whispered into the darkness, "The heir lives." Then the kingdom itself must bleed. The human, holding his child, felt a shiver run down his spine. The battle was not finished, it had only begun, and as thunder rolled across the sky, the baby's cry rose again, louder than the storm. A cry that promised a future no one could have imagined.